रूहों में उतरते हैं सदा मुल्हिम हक के अल्लाह से बंदे को मिला देते हैं रोज़े.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, dear viewers, and welcome to today's episode of Ramazan with MTA. On today's episode, we are going to talk obviously about some important learnings from the Holy Quran and Ahadith. We will also welcome an international guest virtually in our studio, and we will give you some inspiration for an interesting and delicious iftari dish. But we will obviously begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وذا النون إذ ذهب مغاضبا فظن أن لن نقدر عليه فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين.
And remember Dhul-Nun, when he went away in anger, and he thought that we would never cause him distress, and he cried out in depths of darkness, saying, There is no God but thou, holy art thou, I have indeed been of the wrongdoers.
We have just heard a recitation from the Holy Quran, and to speak about this verse, I am joined by Murabbi Farhad Ghaffar Sahib. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Walaikum assalam.
Murabbi Sahib, just to start this off, maybe some of our viewers don't know what Dhul-Nun is. Maybe you could explain who this means.
Well, Zanoon literally translated means man of the fish. So I think by saying man of the fish, especially mentioned in the Holy Quran, pretty much every one of the listeners knows who we are talking about. It's Hazrat Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam. And I think most of us have heard his stories from children's books, Christian stories, Jewish stories, and Islamic books and whatnot. And he was the famous prophet who was swallowed by a large fish for 3 days and 3 nights. So I think this is the short version of the story we all know of.
Yeah, I think one question that many people have is, if you want to understand what happened to Hazrat Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam from a nowadays perspective, is it clear what kind of a fish it was that swallowed him?
To the first part of your question, I will read out the verse again. And it says that when he went away in anger. So there is a big misunderstanding, meaning that he was not angry with God, he was angry with his people because they did not accept his message. And there's quite a lot of things we connect to the story of Hazrat Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam. For example, the fact that he was inside the stomach of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. We give this example with Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam, how he survived the crucifixion, and this was one of the signs which was which Jesus alayhi salam has given. It's also mentioned in the Bible, and also different types of promises. There's some decrees, some promises which are bound to a certain condition, and the condition with the people of Hazrat Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam was that if they repent, if they accept his message, they will not be punished. And then there are certain things which are not bound to any types of conditions. For example, death. There is no condition. You cannot outrun death, or you cannot dodge it. You have to face it eventually. This is the nature according to which Allah Ta'ala has created us. So this was one thing with the people of Hazrat Yunus alayhi salam. And about the fish, it's known that in that area, the Mediterranean Sea, sperm whales have been seen, not the blue whale. Some think it might be the blue whale, the largest animal on earth. But a lot of people think or say that it could have been, then it could have been a sperm whale, because sperm whale are known to eating flesh as well. They eat other fish, and they do have the capacity of holding a man inside, or holding a human being inside their stomach. So, as I said, there is no specific mention of to what kind of fish it was, but if it was one, then it could have been a sperm whale, nothing else.
If we look at this episode during the life of the Prophet Yunus ﷺ, what is the takeaway? What is it that we can learn from that and implement in our daily lives, maybe, as Ramazan is about learning new things and improving in our faith and in our ways?
Well, if you look at the verse again, I will read it out. And remember, Zannun, when he went away in anger, and he thought that we would never cause him distress, and he cried out in depths of darkness, saying, there is no God but thou, holy art thou, I have indeed been of the wrongdoers. So this part, his own prayer, Hazrat Muslim Maud has explained it in a very beautiful way. He said that the way Hazrat Yunus al-Islam prayed teaches us a lot of things. Meaning that every time you pray and you want something from God, rather it would be forgiveness or whatever, you compliment Him. You mention all the good things about God and His power, and you basically acknowledge your weakness compared to God. And just as Islam teaches us that every time you pray, you start with Surah Al-Fatiha by praising God, Allah the Almighty, and then with Durood Sharif, you praise the Holy Prophet, and you send your peace and your peace upon him, and then in your own language you can ask for whatever you want. So this is another example of this Islamic concept which Hazrat Yunus al-Islam has established a very long time before Islam was even here. So this shows that this is also a practice of every single prophet, the way of praying. And Ramazan is a month in which we try to increase this connection between us and Allah the Almighty. So I think this teaches us also one thing, that acknowledge God's almighty power, and acknowledge your own weakness, and acknowledge and accept the fact that you are nothing without the help of Allah the Almighty. So this is one thing we can apply to our daily lives.
Jazakallah Murabi Sahib, quite straightforward advice on how to pray to Allah the right way. And dear viewers, now we will listen to a hadith, and in a couple of moments I will speak to Murabi Sahib about that as well.
عن عبد الله بن عمر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من لم يرحم صغيرنا ولم يعرف حق كبيرنا فليس منا. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated, the Prophet of Allah, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, one who had no compassion for our young ones and did not recognize the rights of our elders was not of us.
Yes, this also seems like quite straightforward advice, this hadith. Murabi Sahib, what is it that this teaches us?
Well, I think there's a lot of things we can learn from this hadith. One thing that comes to my mind right now is equality. Meaning that just because someone is younger, or just because someone is older and has more experience, it doesn't really make him superior. So if someone is, for example, put in charge, you're supposed to follow him no matter what. This is one perspective. Mm-hmm. But I think this also teaches us how the perfect system works. One of the most strict and disciplined departments we know of is, for example, the army. And the army is, this certain code of loyalty and brotherhood doesn't exist in society this way. So Islam teaches us that if someone is put in charge, rather he would be younger than you or senior, you're supposed to respect him. And this is what the army does. Younger ones are respected and older ones are respected. And I think this is why there's always progress in the army. I'm not talking about every army, but I'm talking about the concept that is established pretty much everywhere. And yeah.
I think what is very interesting is, you just mentioned that if you look at different cultures, some cultures are a bit dismissive about the opinions of young ones. Other cultures, they tend to forget the elders, or they think to, they maybe dismiss whatever they are saying. And this concept is very beautiful because it includes everyone, not the people that are, not just the people that are grown-ups, but not old, as you mentioned, equality. How does that contrast what we very often see in this day and age, where it is like, you have to earn my respect, or you have to earn the right that I listen to you?
I think, well, if you look at the history of Islam, a lot of young people were put in charge. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah the Almighty be upon him, has taught the people or the Muslims of that time that no matter who it is, if he's younger than you, if he's older than you, you are supposed to respect him. And people did it. Doesn't matter if their heart was at the right place or not, but it was slowly established amongst the people. And I think we see the perfect example in our own Jamaat. Hazrat Muslim Maud, he became the caliph of our Jamaat at such a young age. And look what he did. He has established the whole system, the entire system of the Jamaat as we know it today. And I think this is a very beautiful teaching with which our Jamaat has established. We see it with Hazur as well. Hazur has mentioned this so many times that we do not look at the age or experience. If someone is put in charge, you are supposed to follow him because he's your leader. And this actually reminds me of an incident. There is an imam I know. He's a German convert, converted when he was very young. So we had a little meeting with other Muslim groups. So one group was complaining that some extremists visit our mosque and they start preaching while our local imam is preaching as well. Okay. So I had a smile on my face and I told them that this is, I can't imagine it. It's impossible, because if something like this would happen in my Jamaat, all of the people listening, they would interfere and they would say that our local imam who we have chosen, he's speaking right now, so you should calm down. And the German imam who listened to my statement, he met me afterwards and he said that even though I'm not an Ahmadi Muslim, but I know that your community has established a very solid system. You guys follow the one who is above you, who is in charge. It doesn't matter if he's young or if he's older, if he has more experience or less experience. And the way he said it, I was not quite sure if he was insulting me or if he was complimenting me. But afterwards, I thought about it a lot, and it made sense that it was actually a compliment. And he was basically trying to say that you have established the golden principle of Islam, which is peace, love, and respect. And this is what Hazrat Masih Maud Islam has brought with him, to revive the original Islamic teaching. And we see this in our system. It's running perfectly fine. Perfectly in line with Islamic teachings. Yes, like
as you mentioned, in the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, if someone was younger but knew more verses of the Holy Quran, he would lead the prayer, not the older ones. It was just about your heart and your knowledge.
Absolutely.
Jazakallah Murabi Sahib. Concluding this part, we are moving on to our international segment where we meet different guests from all around the world. And for that, I am joined by Murabbi Hiskeel Ahmed Sahib from Tokyo. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Murabbi Sahib, for those of our viewers who are not familiar with the country of Japan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the country.
Sure. Japan has a population of about 127 million people. Japan is surrounded by sea from all sides. Therefore, it consists of 5 main islands, and it is said that 3/4 of Japan's land is mountainous. In Japan, we use Japanese, as all of you know, to communicate, and English is not common language in Japan. In Japanese, there are 3 ways to write. So there is kanji, hiragana, and katakana. Kanji is Chinese characters, and hiragana and katakana is alphabets. And kimono is the traditional costume in Japan, but nowadays it is not daily routine to wear kimono in day-to-day life. In most of countries, it is common to take shoes inside the home, but here in Japan, we take off the shoes and wear the slippers in the houses. And punctuality, kindness, and politeness is the distinctive qualities of Japanese nation.
Okay, so you could say they are already quite Muslim. When was the Jamaat Ahmadiyya introduced to Japan?
Jamaat Ahmadiyya was introduced in Japan in Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu's caliphate time. First missionary was Sufi Abdul Qadir Sahib, who came here in Japan in 1935. But unfortunately, world was going towards World War II. Therefore, escalation of the situation caused him to go back in 1941. After 30 years of gap in 1970s, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis Rahimahullah Ta'ala sent missionary to revive the Jamaat activities here in Japan. And at that time, our center was in Tokyo. But in 1980s, our central Jamaat moved to Aichi Prefecture. And since then, our central Jamaat is located in Aichi Prefecture. In 2015, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Nasir al-Aziz, visited Japan and inaugurated the first mosque in Japan.
I think these images are also quite memorable, and many of our viewers might have seen them as well. Murabbi Sahib, it's difficult times that we are living in right now. Every country is affected to some extent by the COVID pandemic. How are people in Japan coping with this pandemic? How are they approaching this issue?
Compared to the other big countries, infection rate of COVID-19 and death rate is low here in Japan. There was no lockdown, but emergency was announced. And emergency was enough to control the number of people in the public places. Therefore, there is no strict restriction on day-to-day life, although restaurant timings have been shortened to 8 p.m. during emergency. In general, public is cooperating with government instructions and trying their best to stay at home. And at home, people are trying new things, planting vegetables and enjoy them to grow, or cooking new dishes, or reading a book that they wanted to read for a long time,
Okay.
etc.
So if you say there aren't many strict regulations there, does it affect your practices during Ramazan at all, or is it just a Ramazan as always?
It will be, inshallah, Ramazan as always. There won't be any hard restrictions.
Okay. And you have mentioned some vegetables earlier. So coming to the topic of food, we are also trying to give our international audience some inspiration for things and dishes that they can try during Ramazan for iftar. What is it that makes, what dish is very common, or the national dish of Japan? What would you suggest?
Basically, seafood is very popular in Japan, and sushi is well-known dish of Japan. Sushi is basically raw fish on vinegared rice. Other dishes can be ramen, natto, miso soups are also famous dishes in Japan. But making a sushi at home in this Ramadan might be an interesting idea.
That sounds like a very good suggestion. Jazakallah Murabbi Sahib, and salam to Japan.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear viewers, if you want to try sushi at home, Ataul Bhai, my dear friend and colleague, has tried that for you and has an interesting recipe.
Today's dish, what I'm going to prepare is sushi, and since everybody knows, for sushi, you don't have to cook anything but the rice. The rest is all raw vegetables and fish. And for today's session, I have chosen two types of sushi. First will be the maki rolls, which are rolled in dried and roasted seaweed. And the other one is nigiri sushi. So before we start making the sushi, let me tell you what kind of ingredients I will choose today. I have tuna fish, cucumber, capsicum, I have salmon and avocado, and of course the three most important ingredients for sushi are soy sauce, wasabi paste, and the ginger. Why the ginger is needed for, I'll let you know later. The most delicate part of making sushi is how to cook the rice. It is very important because if your rice is not sticky enough or if it's too sticky, all the effort will be in vain. So therefore what we have to do is we take the special sushi rice and drain it several times so the water you drain is clear, and you can see the water, it's not that dull. Then place it in the bowl for cooking. Put 200 grams of rice. If you have 200 grams of rice, I would take 240 grams or 240 milliliters of water. Put it on the rice cooker for 15 minutes. Let it steam out for 30 minutes. And then after that, we will take 50 ml of rice vinegar, 1 or 10 milliliter of mirin, which is a liquid of fermented rice, 25 grams of sugar, and a half teaspoon of salt. Mix it all together and then pour it over the rice and try to mix it well with the rice, but do not break the rice. After that, leave the rice, cover it, leave it for room temperature to cool it down, and then your rice is ready to use. Now, how to prepare the sushi? First of all, we need a bamboo mat. We will cover the bamboo mat in plastic foil so we can use it several times. Then, of course, we take the seaweed sheet on top of the bamboo mat. We put some rice on it. So just take a bunch of rice, place it on the seaweed, and make an even layer on the mat. Try to cover also the edges. So every part of the seaweed should be covered except of round about 1 centimeter at the opposite edge where we are going to roll the rice, because this is the place, or this is the 1 centimeter extra space you need to roll up the sushi completely. So once, as you can see, the rice is quite sticky. So once your seaweed sheet is covered with rice, we'll take a little bit of the wasabi paste. Either you can use the hand or you can use a spoon, and just put a slight layer of wasabi onto the rice. Now let's get to the stuffing. Maki rolls, you can use vegetable, for example cucumber. Let's take 1 or 2 stripes of capsicum. If you like to, you can use salmon. So usually sushi is made of raw fish. Make sure that you have good quality of your salmon or tuna fish. Place it together with the other ingredients. And now it's about to roll the sushi. You have to do the first roll together with the bamboo mat. Make sure that everything is stick together and it is tight. So you have to press the roll on both sides, the mat on both sides, to tighten up the seaweed roll. Take it with a map, make sure everything is firm, and then we give it another roll. Once again, press even with your fingers. And then, last but not least, close the maki roll. Now your maki roll is ready. Now, another thing to consider for sushi is you have to have a very sharp knife. Otherwise, your roll will not be cut evenly. So one cut in the half, cut both rolls evenly. 1, 2, 2. For the nigiri sushi, I will take some water, put it on my hand, and then just form the rice with the palm of my hands, like this shape. Your palms stay a little bit wet so all the sushi rice will not be stick to your hand. And now what you can do is you can, if you like to, take some wasabi paste and place it on the rice already. Now I have thin cut slices of tuna fish which I will use. So I have one tuna nigiri, or I can use fresh salmon, also cut in slices. Of course, there are so many varieties of sushi. You have the California rolls as well. You could prepare. These are made also almost like the maki rolls, but you take the rice upside down and then of course cover and coat the rice with black and white sesame seeds. Dear viewers, these were the two common types of sushi, the maki rolls and the nigiri. Of course, there are several other varieties you can enjoy and you can discover. For example, you have sushi made like dumplings, and of course the California rolls, where you place the rice on to the seaweed sheet, turn it around, stuff it in, and then coat the rice with black and white sesame seeds, so you have the rice inside out. And yeah, that's about it of sushi today. I hope you will enjoy preparing and eating sushi as much as I did. See you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Interesting recipe for a sushi, but moving on to the maybe way more important part of Ramazan. Sustenance and food is one part, but it's a minor part. The bigger part is improving in our morals and in our spirituality. And if you are looking for suggestions for books, which books to read during Ramazan to improve spiritually, we have some suggestions prepared for you in our book corner. Assalamu alaikum, Murabbi Sahib.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Nasir Sahib. Welcome viewers in Book Corner. Today we have another book of the Promised Messiah ﷺ in our Book Corner. This is Haqiqatul Wahi. As the name suggests, this book is about divine revelation. What makes a revelation divine? What features suggest that a revelation is personal ambition or satanic interventions? This is what this book is all about. What we learn from this book is that mere fulfillment of any prophecy does not make it a divine prophecy. And even if a prophecy is from God and it fulfills, it does not make that person a godly person. Promised Messiah ﷺ had explained in detail the philosophy behind divine revelations. The Promised Messiah ﷺ has classified the bearer of revelation into three categories. Firstly, those people who have no connection whatsoever with God. Then there is a second group of people who have connection with God, a relationship with God, but that is very weak, as if their inner fire is not yet fully dead. But that weak relationship enables them to receive revelation from God. Then there are third group of people. People who have reached perfect realization of God. People who have attained a complete union to God. Those people who have sacrificed themselves, their worldly self, and now they live with God and God lives with them. And the God has chosen the Promised Messiah ﷺ to be of that third group. There are so many prophecies, revelation that Hazur has put in detail in this book, and all of them came to pass as they were foretold by the God and the Prophet Muhammad. In this book, Hazur has mentioned more than 180 signs, revelation and prophecies that God foretold him, and eventually the world had witnessed that all of them fulfilled as they were promised by the Prophet Muhammad. This book was written in 1907, 1 year before the demise of the Prophet Muhammad. So in other words, we find nearly a complete detail of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, how God had put his trust into him. So in this book, Hazur has detailed more than 180 prophecies, revelations, and with proofs and the name of witnesses. Hazur has detailed in this book 180 prophecies and revelations. But among all these prophecies, there are so many prophecies which are related in some personal level with each one of us. Many of us are born Ahmadis, born in Ahmadi families. But these signs, revelations, prophecies eventually made our forefathers join Ahmadiyya. Along with all these prophecies, which Hazur has detailed here, there are so many other topics which Hazur had discussed here. For example, believing in Prophet. Hazur had mentioned in this book that it is important for anybody who wish to achieve a salvation to believe in each and every of the Prophet. Some people claim that believing in God and in His unity and living a pious life is more than enough to achieve salvation. But Hazrat Sahib, Hazrat Prophet Muhammad had categorically clarified this issue and once for all, and said that if you don't believe in one of the prophets, you're actually not believing in God Himself. But there are certain very famous prophecies and signs like Lekram, Atham, Doi, which we are all familiar with. But here we find so many other signs of God which are not so commonly known to us. There we find that how God had helped the promised Messiah ﷺ in each and every manner, in each and every aspect of life. Hazur discussed in detail the beliefs of Abdul Hakim, who had this beliefs, or he had set his own sect, claiming that to reach God, one does not need to follow the footsteps of Holy Prophet ﷺ. Hazur said one cannot fathom the full essence of the unity of God if he is not following the footsteps of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And not only the Holy Prophet ﷺ, if somebody is not following or believing in the prophethood of one single prophet, he cannot attain the true understanding of the true unity of God. As you can see, this is a big book and it is literally impossible to even name the main points in this small window of time that we have here, 3 or 4 minutes. So we tried our best to cover as much as possible, and for the rest of the part, inshallah ta'ala, will come to you later.
Jazakallah Murabbi Sahib. For our next segment, we are going to talk about health. One of the common illnesses during this day and age is diabetes, and it also plays a role during Ramazan. To speak about this topic, I am joined by Dr. Raza Rahman. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Dr. Sahib, I think for people who suffer from diabetes, one of the main questions is, can they fast if they are suffering from diabetes?
So first, we need to be clear that we're on the same page. We're talking about patients that suffer type 2 diabetes, because that's the most common type of diabetes, which is also a type of acquired diabetes, which most patients are familiar with after a certain age. It's a part of health-related problems, lack of good nutrition, lack of physical activity. And also there's a familial component that leads to type 2 diabetes. type 2 diabetes is a dysfunctioning, is a malfunctioning insulin. Insulin is a hormone that is secreted by the pancreas, which is an organ of your intestinal system. So for those patients, we have to look, because not every diabetic patient is the same. There's a vast range of patients ranging from very mild diabetes or so-called pre-diabetes to patients that suffer very severe diabetes and are dependent on the regular intake of their medication. So first of all, let's make clear who should not fast, because that's the most important.
Yeah, I think so.
If you're a diabetic patient who has uncontrolled blood sugar levels, if you have had to go to the hospital or seek medical treatment in the past 3 to 6 months because of your diabetes, either due to hyperglycemia, which means a too high blood sugar level, or either due to hypoglycemia, which means that you had too low blood sugar levels, you should stay away from the fasting, because this may be very dangerous for you. Other than that, there are patients who have poorly controlled blood sugar levels for many months. This also, there's a high chance for exacerbation, for worsening of blood sugar levels during the month of Ramazan. And those people with poor controlled blood sugar levels, they should also not fast.
What would you recommend if someone is suffering from diabetes? Of course, we are talking generally about the subject. People should always consult their doctors. What would you say? Like, what measures can they take?
If you're a diabetic who has a pre-diabetic stage or a mild form of diabetes, which is controlled with oral medication, then you might try to fast as long as it's not interfering with your health. And for that, it is very important to monitor your blood sugar levels on a regular basis. The more often you monitor them, the better you can predict when to stop or interrupt your fasting. As a figure, you can remember, blood sugar levels below the value of 70 are very dangerous for hypoglycemic states, which may eventually lead to coma.
Okay.
Even, or
so quite severe outcomes.
Quite severe outcomes if not treated immediately. You should eat sugar if that happens immediately. And then also blood sugar levels above the level of 300, they in the long term are also dangerous. Because they can also cause dehydration, increased frequency of urination, and increased thirst. So if your blood sugar levels are above 300, also you should interrupt and seek medical advice. Yeah.
One question that you can probably answer from the theological standpoint, because Dr. Saib just said that it is important, if your doctor gives you the go-ahead for fasting, that you should monitor your blood sugar levels, and usually that is done via a blood drop. Is that something that already would interrupt your fast, or is that permissible?
No, not really. It shouldn't interrupt. I mean, those are usually small drops. Correct me if I'm wrong. And well, usually, Hazrat Muslim Maud has a golden rule. He says that your wuzu, your ablution breaks if something exits your body, and your fast breaks if something enters the body. And of course, if it's a heavy blood loss, I'm sure Dr. Saab would advise the same, to break your fast immediately. That's bad for your health. But if it's a small drop, there's no harm in it.
Another question which is related to that, of course, people who have suffer from diabetes in a way that they cannot fast. And I think this is something that is painful for every Muslim if they are told that they cannot do that. But what ways do they have? I mean, Islam gives a clear rule when to fast, when not to fast, and what to do if you cannot for health reasons. Maybe you could elaborate on that a bit.
Well, there's two types of reasons. One is temporary, one is permanent. You could be a traveler, or if a woman is pregnant, or if you're temporarily sick, let's say during the month of Ramazan. That's one scenario. The other one is if you're permanently sick and you cannot fast at all. Dr. Zab explained it very well, but the different types of diabetes and how to control them and how severe they can be if you do fast despite those conditions. So let's say it's temporary, then you can pay fidya and you can repeat those days afterwards. And if it's permanent and your health does not allow you to fast, then you can pay fidya. This is one concept Islam has established. So you can still do something good. And in the end, the intention matters.
Jazakallah Murabbi Sahib, and Jazakallah to you as well, Dr. Sahib. Dear viewers, please remember that we are just speaking generally on this topic. Before you fast as a diabetes patient, please consult your doctor and ask them if you are ready to fast, and only do so if they give you the go-ahead. And with this, we conclude not only our health segment, but also today's episode of Ramazan with MTA. Tomorrow, please tune in at the same time from a different studio, but the same program. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
रूहों में उतरती है सदा